Hello, I'm Priscilla James. I reside in Central Prison. Central Prison's death row to be exact. I've been a resident here for 36 years, and I'd like to speak about my education of prison. When I got here in '87, this was a very dark place. No communication, no love, no sharing. Truthfully, stabbings and rape were not uncommon. That was in '87. Some 3 years after that, about 90 an educational program hit death row. It was a combination video correspondence, and believe it or not, the course was called, it was sponsored by UNC, and it was called Ethics in America. And more than a couple dozen of us took it. I'd say it was just 66 people on the row back then. And I'm going to say half of us were enrolled. What that program did to the level of our living, it was slow taking off, but as we got into it, we got into the discussions, we got into ethical philosophy, our own morals started trading back and forth. Our own backgrounds really started becoming familiar to each one of us. Things we hadn't really talked about at that level prior to this program. The program brought a whole new light, like the rising tide, and we all rose with it. I became friends with, I'm black, trans from California, and I became best friends with a South Carolinian white guy who you just would have never saw us hanging out. But through this discussion of education, through this discussion of our higher ideas, we became close friends. And that was a bright period for the row. That was a bright period for the prison. Less violence, less stealing, less fights. Everything got much better for that period. And then some afterward. Administrations changed, governors changed, programs left. Went to another really dark period. It was so obvious to me immediately. In 92, 93, the Shaw and Wake Tech entered the prisons. Shaw University and Wake Tech entered the prisons. I was off the road for a short time there, a few years, and so I got to enter the Shaw program. Wake Tech introduced the computer lab, and I got to be involved in that. What I'm trying to share with you again is things change. People, instead of being on the yard, wilding out, people started coming and learning computer science, computer language. We in the Shaw program got into the humanities, social sciences, even our math class became great areas for discussion. It was a fantastic time. For over the next 2 years, rising tide, we all lifted up. I mean, if you had to be in prison, this would have been the way you want to do it. That's what you would have been thinking if you were here. I graduated from the Shaw program along with a handful of other men, a dozen men or so. And we have a bond now. Me and those guys, we are bonded. We are so tight, but prison changed. Presidency changed, governorship changed, administration at the highest levels changed, and away went the programs. we're back to idleness, idle minds. You know what they say. And along with those came the danger, came the violence, came the disruptions. Again, it's so obvious to me what works in prison and what doesn't. I'm to this day wondering how they don't know. They being the administration. So, 95, I come back to death row. I didn't win my resentencing hearing. I come back to death row. And it's kind of wild, you know. We had 10 years, a little less than 10 years of some real up and down, up and down, up and down, you know. It was bad, and it was level, and then it was bad, and then it was bad. Then around 2013 came. And a young man walked in death row named Dr. Peter Cruz. He brought a whole new level of programming, educational programming to death row. Programming about interpersonal relationships, the humanities, program about speech and debate, creative writing. He brought these programs to us. And it was like someone ripped the roof off this place and the sun shone on us. For real, for real. And I learned so much about the people I had been living with for 20 years then, even longer. I learned so much more about them. I gained respect for people that I had really, not that I'm one to dismiss people, but, you know, I'm human. People I hadn't even really given a lot of credit to showed me so much more about themselves because they had an opportunity to, you know, display what they know or show how quickly they were able to learn. Their adaptability to a learning situation. Everybody rose. Communication amongst us, in school, out of school, was great. Creatively, the juices were flowing here. We were writing plays. We were deconstructing writings. We were doing things that I'm sure none of us ever imagined ourselves doing. Toastmasters came in. We had a wonderful time at Toastmasters. Guys really rose. They really rose. It was incredible. What else did we do? The classes are numerous. We wrote a play here. A book was published from the writings, from our short story writings. 2 plays were done here. One play is out in the world right now. One of the ones I took part of. It's out in the world right now. It's had many different versions of it, but the people who worked with us, Hidden Voices came in, they worked with us. Restorative Justice people came in and worked with us. And we gave 110% back. The longer it went on, the more deeper we all were involved. Great time. Great time. But the forces to be, I'm going to say the old school mentality, worked hard to take all that away from us, and eventually they were victorious. And upon that, the roof went back over, the sun stopped shining, and it got real dark in here for a while, and has been since. You need education in prison. Education needs to be the top priority of prison. I can say that from experience. Administration could say that if they just look at the history of the last 36 years. I can quote them. When times were bad and when times were good, what was going on in prison? In this prison? Education. Education should be front and foremost. We send our children to school not just to educate them, but because we don't want them to have an idle mind. Out in the streets is trouble. It's the same thing here. If we're idle minded and we're wandering around prison, it's trouble. Give people the opportunity to learn in prison, and they will take it and run with it. I've seen it over and over and over again. And that's the plea. That's my plea. If you want to advocate for prison, advocate for education in prison. It's the best gift you can give us. Well, short of getting out. So, thank you for listening to me. I appreciate this moment, Valerie. And I'm grateful to all y'all out there. Bye-bye.